Mark and Eliza Halloway were the couple everyone wanted to be until the night they vanished without a trace, leaving behind a dinner table set for two, a barking dog, and a mystery so chilling it still haunts every corner of Elmridge. The town of Elmridge was the kind of place where the days moved slowly, where neighbors nodded to each other as they passed, and children rode their bikes along cracked sidewalks. Mark and Eliza Halloway were a part of that slow rhythm, living in a modest blue house with white shutters and a carefully kept front lawn. Mark, who once worked as a surveyor, spent his mornings reading the newspaper on the porch, while Eliza tended to her roses, snipping away the dead leaves with quiet focus. They were the couple everyone described as kind, private, and peaceful, attending Sunday service without fail and bringing apple pies to the community bake sales. It was a life so ordinary that no one could have imagined the horror that would one day settle over their doorstep, spreading through the town like a cold fog no one could clear away. In late October, when the air was already sharp and the leaves covered the sidewalks in orange and brown, small details began to unsettle the neighbors. The mailman noticed the Halloway's mailbox was full for 3 days in a row, the newspapers piling on the porch untouched. The family across the street noticed that the kitchen light, which usually glowed warmly at dawn, was dark. Mark and Eliza's dog, a small terrier named Buddy, was heard barking inside the house for hours. The kind of bark that spoke of confusion and hunger, not the excited bark of a dog waiting for a treat. It wasn't long before Mrs. Whitaker, their closest neighbor, called the police for a welfare check, her voice shaking as she explained that she hadn't seen them for days and that something didn't feel right. When the police arrived, the house stood silent under a gray sky, the wind rattling the branches of the trees in the yard. The front door was locked, but the back gate was left open. Swinging slightly in the breeze, an officer peered through the windows and saw the dinner table set for two, plates of food left untouched, now cold and beginning to smell, flies gathering in the silence. They forced entry and moved through the house, calling out the couple's names, but there was no answer. The air inside was heavy with the smell of rotting food and something else, something stale and faint that made the officers pause in the hallway. In the bedroom, Eliza's purse was found on the dresser, her wallet inside with cash and credit cards untouched. Mark's watch lay ticking beside the bed, his phone still on the charger, displaying a dark screen filled with missed notifications from concerned neighbors. Every room was in perfect order, no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. Their car was still parked in the driveway with a near-full tank of gas, keys hanging on the hook near the door, as if waiting for Mark to take them on another quiet drive to the market. The fridge was stocked, the calendar on the wall, marked with reminders for the week, a doctor's appointment for Eliza, a note about picking up firewood for the coming winter. It was as if the couple had been lifted out of their lives in the middle of an ordinary evening, leaving everything behind, even their dog, who was found in the laundry room, shaking and thirsty, but alive. As the rain began to fall that evening, washing over the porch and clearing the leaves from the steps, the police taped off the house and began their investigation. But there were no fingerprints except the couple's, no strange footprints in the yard, no signs of forced entry. The neighbors watched from behind their curtains as the police carried out evidence bags containing nothing but normal, everyday items that offered no clues. The town of Elmridge, once a place where nothing ever happened, now held its breath, waiting for answers that would not come, as the story of the couple who disappeared without a trace began to stir fear that no locked door could keep away. A week turned into a month, and the Halloway house remained untouched, a silent shell of the life that once thrived inside its blue walls. The local police tried to reassure the community, stating that they were following every lead, but in reality, they had nothing. Flyers with Mark and Eliza's faces appeared on telephone poles, in grocery stores, and on the glass doors of the town library, each one slowly curling at the edges from the damp air. Candlelight vigils were held in the church, and neighbors gathered with flashlights, searching the woods at night, calling out the couple's names with voices that grew thinner each time. It was during these nights that fear began to settle in. The realization that something darker might have happened to the Halloways, something that no one wanted to say out loud. Then, a teenager named Danny, who often filmed abandoned places for his small social media channel, decided to explore the old mill outside town, a crumbling structure with shattered windows and graffiti-covered walls. The place had always been a source of ghost stories among local kids, stories about shadows moving in the windows and voices heard after dark. With a camera in hand, Danny moved through the mill, narrating for his channel as he stepped over broken wood and rusted metal. His flashlight beam caught something unusual in the corner of one of the old storage rooms. A circle of burned-down candles melted into thick pools of wax, surrounding what appeared to be a small collection of objects, carefully arranged in the center. As Danny moved closer, the camera captured the unmistakable image of a burned photograph. It was a wedding photo of Mark and Eliza, the edges blackened, the center image still visible, their faces smiling on a day filled with hope, now twisted by flames. Scattered around the photograph were other small items: a woman's hairbrush, a rusted key, and a piece of blue fabric that looked like it had been torn from clothing. The circle was lined with a crust of salt, forming a rough boundary around the objects. Danny's video went viral in the community within hours, forcing the police to secure the mill and investigate the strange find. Inside the mill, authorities found more than what Danny's camera had shown. Under a tarp near the circle of candles, they discovered a small tin box containing what looked like personal trinkets, an old keychain with a faded M, a gardening glove that Eliza's friends recognized from her rose garden, and a ring with a deep blue stone that did not match anything the family had reported missing but somehow felt significant. Perhaps most chilling was Mark's leather-bound notebook, filled with his neat handwriting. Inside were pages of numbers, coordinates marked with small X symbols, and dates beside them, some recent, others months old, all leading to dense parts of the forest surrounding Elmridge. Police searched these coordinates but found nothing, only cold soil and fallen branches, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, reminding them how easy it was to hide things in the vast woods. Rumors began to swirl through the town. Some said the burned candles and the salt circle meant there was a cult hiding in Elmridge, practicing rituals in the shadows. Others whispered that Mark had discovered something he shouldn't have, that his quiet walks into the woods were never as harmless as they seemed. The Halloways, once seen as just another quiet couple, were now the center of a chilling puzzle that seemed to have no solution. As winter approached and the trees lost their leaves, the town held its breath, the unease growing stronger with every day. The Halloways remained missing, as if the forest itself was hiding the answers no one could find. Spring arrived in Elmridge, but the warmth did nothing to lift the heavy shadow that the Halloways' disappearance had cast over the town. The blue house remained empty, the grass in the yard growing tall, and the mailbox removed by the family, to stop the painful reminders that Mark and Eliza were still missing. The community moved forward in small, hesitant steps, but whispers about the couple continued to fill the air in the grocery aisles, at the post office, and during quiet moments in church. Each new lead brought a flicker of hope, only to end in disappointment, leaving the case frozen in uncertainty. 6 months after the couple vanished, a new clue reignited the investigation when a hiker named Susan ventured into a remote stretch of forest, hoping to capture spring photos of wildflowers. As she crossed a narrow deer path, a flash of blue caught her eye, tangled on a low branch. Pulling it free, she saw it was a torn piece of fabric, faded, but clearly once a vibrant blue, with a small embroidered flower near the edge. Susan later recalled feeling a chill at that moment, a sudden, inexplicable heaviness in the air. She brought the fabric to the police, and Eliza's sister confirmed it was from the scarf Eliza wore often, one she had received as a birthday gift the year before. The fabric was found near an old hunting cabin, half swallowed by the forest, its roof sagging, and the wood dark with rot. Investigators entered the cabin carefully, the air inside thick with the smell of damp wood and mold. Dust lay over every surface, but there were footprints in the dirt floor, recent and clear, leading toward the stone fireplace. One officer noticed a loose floorboard, and when it was pried open, they discovered a small, rusted lockbox hidden in the darkness beneath the cabin. Inside the box were yellowed letters tied with a brittle piece of string. Letters that dated back to 1978 and belonged to a woman who had vanished from Elmridge that same year. The letters were filled with fear, describing how the woman had followed someone she trusted into the woods after he promised to show her something worth seeing. She wrote about strange gatherings near the forest, of people she didn't recognize wearing masks made from animal skulls, and about a promise she had been given that if she joined them, she would be safe forever. She wrote that she felt watched at all times, and the final letter ended abruptly, the last line reading, "I hear them outside." The discovery of the lockbox expanded the investigation, forcing the authorities to examine the possibility that the Halloway's disappearance was not an isolated event, but part of a chilling pattern hidden in the town's history. Files were pulled from storage, and old missing persons cases were re-examined, revealing that several disappearances over the decades had occurred within the same wooded areas, always under unexplained circumstances. Maps of the forest were marked with red pins, each one a name that had faded from the town's memory until now. The discovery also deepened the fear in Elmridge. If the letters were to be believed, then the forest was not simply a place where people vanished. It was a place where something waited, something that had been there for years, unnoticed by a town that thought it was safe. The Halloway's case, once seen as a tragic but isolated mystery, now connected to something older and more sinister, and with every day that passed, the question of what really happened to Mark and Eliza weighed more heavily on the community, reminding them that some secrets remain hidden for a reason, waiting patiently beneath the silence of the trees.
The warm months brought new growth to Elmridge's woods, but beneath the green canopy, investigators and volunteers continued to comb through the shadows, hoping for any trace of the Halloways. It was during a construction project for a new bypass that the case took a sharp turn, one that made even the most skeptical residents feel the icy grip of fear. The crew had been digging into the soft earth on the outskirts of the forest when the backhoe struck something hard beneath the soil, a dull thud that echoed strangely in the early morning air. The workers paused, expecting to find a forgotten pipe or old foundation stone. But what they uncovered was a tunnel entrance sealed by a rusted iron door, its hinges nearly fused by time and moisture. The authorities arrived quickly, forcing the door open with tools, the scent of cold, damp air rushing out like a breath held for decades. Flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating brick walls lined with old wooden supports, leading deeper underground in a narrow passage. The tunnel stretched beneath the forest, hidden all these years, a secret buried beneath the feet of those who lived their entire lives in Elmridge without suspecting what lay below. As the team moved further, they found discarded blankets and empty cans of food, evidence that someone had been using the tunnel recently. A lantern was discovered, its fuel scent still sharp, suggesting it had been lit not long before. Deeper in the tunnel, the path ended at a locked iron gate, and beyond it, a set of stone steps descended into a chamber carved into the earth. The room was small but chilling in its contents. The walls were lined with old newspaper clippings, carefully pinned and preserved, each detailing missing persons cases from Elmridge and nearby towns, some dating back over 60 years. Faces stared out from the yellowed pages. Stories of people who had disappeared without explanation, now joined together in this hidden shrine of loss and mystery. Maps of the forest were pinned alongside the clippings, covered with small marks and dates in red ink. But it was the photographs that rattled even the most experienced officers. Dozens of photos of Mark and Eliza were pinned across one wall, taken without their knowledge. The images showed them walking their dog, sitting in their garden carrying groceries into the house, unaware they were being watched. Some were taken from such close range that it was clear the photographer had been on their property, hiding in the shadows. A small metal table stood in the corner, a single chair positioned to face the wall of photographs, as if someone had spent hours sitting and watching their private moments over and over again beneath the chair. The floor was stained, and initial tests confirmed it was blood, but it did not match either Mark or Eliza. It raised more questions than answers. Who had been watching the Halloways? How long had they been watched? And what did the person who built this hidden room want from them? The discovery deepened the sense of dread in Elmridge, turning the forest from a place of simple, natural beauty into a place where secrets lingered. Secrets that might never come fully into the light. As investigators packed evidence from the tunnel and the photographs into boxes, they could not shake the feeling that the person who created this underground shrine might still be out there, watching. The community that once believed their small town was safe began to lock their doors earlier, pulled their children inside before dusk, and avoid the forest paths they once walked freely. The Halloway's disappearance, once seen as a tragic mystery, had now become the catalyst for fear that stretched through every street and home. As Elmridge realized that some eyes might still be watching from the shadows, waiting for the next quiet couple to disappear without a trace. Summer returned to Elmridge with heavy, humid air that clung to the skin, but even the bright sun could not clear the darkness that had settled over the town. The discovery of the hidden tunnel had become a grim landmark, a place where police tape fluttered in the breeze, reminding residents that the truth behind Mark and Eliza Halloway's disappearance remained buried deeper than anyone could reach. Rumors twisted through the community like smoke, and families that once felt safe in their routines began looking over their shoulders on evening walks. The forest, once a place where children played and hikers wandered freely, became a boundary between the familiar and the unknown. 2 years after the Halloways vanished, the case seemed to have settled into that quiet, painful limbo of unsolved mysteries until a new discovery shifted everything once again. A group of hikers, following an old game trail in a thick section of woods, stumbled upon a small cabin hidden beneath a heavy cover of vines and leaning trees. Its roof was patched, with mismatched boards, and the windows were dark, the glass covered in a film of dirt and moss. The hikers, driven by curiosity, forced the door open, the wood splintering under their weight as the stale air of the cabin escaped in a slow exhale. Inside, the cabin was eerily quiet, dust motes swirling in the thin shafts of sunlight that broke through cracks in the wood. A single bed stood against the wall, its blanket neatly folded at the end, as if prepared for someone who never returned to claim it. At the foot of the bed were 2 piles of folded clothing, one men's, one women's, both covered in a thin layer of dust. On a small table by the bed, a tape recorder rested, old and scratched, a single cassette already loaded inside. The hikers did not touch it, but when the police arrived, they carefully removed the recorder and took it into evidence, hoping it might hold the answers the entire town had been waiting for. When the tape was played, the recording began with a low hiss, the sound of wind and rustling leaves filling the silence. For nearly a minute, there was nothing but the sound of the forest, distant birds, and the faint creak of wood, until a dog's bark echoed softly, unmistakably familiar to those who had lived near the house. Then, 2 voices called out in the distance, a man's and a woman's, faint but clear, calling for help, their words breaking with fear before fading into silence. The room where the tape played was still, each person present struck by the realization that they were hearing what might have been the final moments of Mark and Eliza Halloway recorded without their knowledge in a hidden place, their fear captured forever on a thin strip of tape. Forensic analysis confirmed that the voices belonged to Mark and Eliza, but beyond that, the tape offered no clues, no clear location, no sound of struggle, no identity of who had been recording them. The cabin was examined inch by inch, but no human remains were found, and no fingerprints other than those of the hikers who discovered it were recovered. It was as if the couple had stood in that cabin, calling for help, only to vanish once more into the forest that surrounded them. The discovery of the tape became a grim symbol of the case, played repeatedly on news channels, each replay stirring the town's unease. Elmridge could no longer pretend its forest was only a quiet, peaceful place. It had become a graveyard of secrets, and Mark and Eliza Halloway had become part of its mystery. Their disappearance an echo in the leaves that would never fade, stirring the world as one of the most haunting cases in true crime history, reminding everyone that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that leave behind no answers, only the hollow sound of voices calling for help where no one can find them.